Okay, guys, and we're back with another episode of the Seth Solo Side Quest. I'm Seth from the Lonely Solo podcast, and this is episode 24 of my side quest. Now, 24 episodes is crazy. 24 episodes is crazy work, bro. Like, that's one episode off 25, and 25 would put us a quarter of a way to 100 episodes. Insane work, G. But, as usual, we'll talk about the same sort of topics we normally talk about. This one's going to be more of a wrestling one, because we're looking at a Bleacher Report article about ranking the 5 possible opponents for Roman Reigns at WrestleMania 41. I'm going to talk a bit about them, talk about who it could be, who it couldn't be, and sort of review some of the names on this list. So, first person they've got up is Jacob Fatu. Now, Jacob Fatu, is taking the WWE by storm. He's a guy who I wasn't too familiar with before he got to WWE. I'd seen a few bits here and there from him, but now that he's in WWE, he's really got in his bag. And even initially when he first came into WWE, he was sort of in more of a bit of a side role, a bit of a, more of a side character. I wasn't really in the limelight too much because it was mostly like focusing the bloodline on Solo Sikoa, who was kind of leading that new sort of era of the bloodline. But I think from the get-go, it's been like really clear that Jacob Fatu is like one of the best in the business, and like head and shoulders above pretty much everyone else in the bloodline at that moment, that version of the bloodline with Tama Tonga, Solo, and then Tonga Loa. I think that's the other guy's name. So Jacob Fatu, it's a match that wouldn't really make much sense because for me, Jacob Fatu is still very much seen as like still more of a side character right now. Now, he definitely could be a main character. And like a solo star, like, could definitely do that. But you have to get to that point. Just because you're capable of it doesn't mean you just arrive there. There's a journey that he needs to go on, and to be fair, he's going on that journey with matches like done with Braun Strowman and that sort of storyline. But really, Jacob will have to turn on the bloodline for him to get like that sort of run as a solo star, because Jacob Fatu, he's not the type of leader to be able... He's not the type of guy to lead a faction. He's not a Roman Reigns. He's not a Solo. He's a great enforcer in a stable, or he has to be like a lone wolf. He has to be a lone wolf. You can't have him in like a stable because you're just kind of restricting him, or because he doesn't talk as much. Or, to be fair, previously in the Bloodline, he hasn't been talking as much. So that kind of does give the illusion of him as like a right-hand man. Rather than a... lead, rather like a lead, That being said, Jacob Fatu v Roman Reigns, I don't think that's one that's particularly likely to happen. I think it's more likely that you get Jacob Fatu turning on Solo than Jacob Fatu facing Roman Reigns. But Roman Reigns is an interesting situation because obviously he's coming off a super long title reign, and when you come off a long title reign and then a long storyline with Solo Sikoa, so after that you don't really go straight back into a world title match, but anything other than a world title match feels less than. Like him coming back to face Solo after Roman just dominated the entire industry for like 4 years. Now he's coming back and having matches with Solo Sikoa. It definitely feels less than, and anything less than a title shot feels less than for Roman. But Jacob Fatu, I don't think is tremendously likely, even if it would be a great match. Then next we've got Drew McIntyre, potentially. This is one that could potentially definitely be an option because they've got that story. But Drew McIntyre's just lost so many big matches at this point. And this is what we're talking about. This is what I was talking about previously in an episode that I released a long time ago. I was talking about Adam Cole, a guy who has like next to no physicality. He looks like I could beat him up. Drew McIntyre, the way Drew McIntyre's been able to stay as a main eventer despite losing so many big matches at this point is his physicality. He's a big dude, a big, hairy Scottish guy who looks like he would beat up pretty much anyone. Even though he's in these big matches and he's losing to Punk, he's losing to Rollins, he's losing the Royal Rumble. Like, he's losing these matches. But his physicality and his presence and his aura keep him up there. Of course, Roman and Drew have got a lengthy history with one another. They've had storylines there, they've had rivalries, they've had matches for the title. Obviously, Drew lost. Obviously, that's what Drew does when it comes to big matches. He loses. So there's the pre-existing story there, but it feels like it doesn't feel like Drew's quite right, but it's definitely a possibility. Who they got next? Cody Rhodes. Now, Cody Rhodes is one that, I'll be honest, I really wouldn't want to see for a third Mania in a row. I wouldn't want to see Roman v Cody for a third Mania. You saw it at 39, saw it at 40, seen it again at 41. I mean, the story's not really there because they finished it off already. They finished that story. It's done. And what you're going to do, you're going to have Roman lose again in a Mania main event and not win the title, or you're going to have him win the title. You know, and then do what, like another 4-year reign? And they're not going to give him, hopefully they don't give anyone another 4-year reign. This 1-year reign with Cody Rhodes, which will be a 1-year reign because he might lose it at Mania, but he's holding it until at least Mania, which will make it a year-long reign, which is ridiculous. He should have lost it months ago. He should have lost it at Royal Rumble, but he could have lost it a few months ago before, because you need to freshen things up. One guy shouldn't be holding a world title for this long. It was okay for Roman, because Roman just had so much aura. Cody, as a babyface, hasn't really got that aura. He did at the start, and as I'm saying, like I like those title reign at the start, but even by the time it was getting to like SummerSlam, I'm like, yeah, let's wrap this up now. And then they've carried it on until it's just been Royal Rumble now, but he won't lose it at Elimination Chamber. He'll go into Mania as the champion. So Cody Rhodes is another one that I think is very unlikely. I don't know who Cody Rhodes will face at Mania though. I imagine maybe they'll do a number one contendership at the Chamber, or they'll do it for the WWE title at the Chamber and then do a rematch at Mania. I don't know. We'll see. But yeah, Cody Rhodes is unlikely for me. Then who they got next? Seth Rollins. Seth Rollins, at this moment now, Seth Rollins does look like a very possible contender because they had Seth do this weird, well, I mean, not weird, but like he just crashed out on Roman for like no reason. I don't really know why Seth just went ham on him like that. I mean, there's obviously reasons why, but like, come on. There's other guys, you've been beefing Punk and like beefing Drew McIntyre more recently than you've been beefing Roman, and you didn't crash out on them, man, like that. So the sort of crash out Seth had on Roman does kind of suggest that those two could have a Mania match, which wouldn't be too bad at all. I think both guys are still more than capable of putting on a great match. Plus, you give these guys a slot on Mania, no doubt these guys are going to turn up and show out. And if they get a long slot, they can maybe put on an instant classic. Because in theory, these are two guys that should have loads of chemistry. I can't remember the last time these guys faced. They haven't faced off one-on-one in a very long time, in a good few years. But yeah, wouldn't be a match I wouldn't mind seeing. Of course, these were two former Shield mates. Seth turned on the Shield, and everyone knows the story there. But that's a decent little option there. Seth v Roman from Mania. And then number one, they're saying, is CM Punk. CM Punk will be another interesting one. To be honest, based off what we saw at Royal Rumble, I think they could even be teasing like a triple threat. A Seth, Roman, and Punk triple threat at Mania. Because it was like the three of them they got eliminated at the Rumble at the same sort of time, and they were all fighting at the end. It was an interesting moment, and you don't often see, it's very hard to see like these three-way rivalries. It's hard to make them work, but when they're done right, they're really, really entertaining. And there's that added layer of unpredictability because there's another guy. Then like, normally every feud's typically like a 1v1 feud. But then you add in a third guy and you're like, whoa, this is a loose cannon. Literally anything can happen here. And Seth Rollins very well could be that sort of unpredictable factor, that sort of loose cannon, that third wheel in a good way type of thing. Because you've got Roman and CM Punk who it's just as much as Roman and Seth have history. Roman and Punk equally have history. Probably not as much, but it's still a history that the fan base is very aware of. They know there's tension there. They know, of course, both of them are involved with Paul Heyman. You know Paul Heyman's a slimy dude. You never know what he's going to do. You never know who's going to turn on. He's turned on Punk before. He's, represented Brock Lesnar. Brock Lesnar won't be coming back apparently, but Paul's turned on Punk before. Could be a crazy one. That could be a very interesting storyline if they go ahead with it. I mean, Punk wouldn't be a bad shout. Obviously, you've got Rollins. Seth Rollins is ranked number 2, second most likely, and Punk's ranked number 1. Either one of those guys would be my pick. I think Roman could have a potentially very interesting Mania season, considering he's basically not really anywhere near the world title scene at the moment as well, where he probably needs to stay out for a good period of time, because when the time is ready for Roman to come back to the main event scene, realistically, Roman needs to go back and win a world title. He doesn't need to be used as like a guy to like pad and give him like a title defense. Like when AJ Styles came back and faced Cody Rhodes at Backlash in France earlier last year, you know AJ Styles was never winning that championship. Roman doesn't need to be used like AJ was used in that situation. Like, if you're going to put Roman Reigns back in the main event, make him in a world title shot, he's probably going to win, because he kind of deserves that at this point. The amount of equity he's built up with the fan base and popularity and aura and character development, that's what he deserves to come back to when the time is right. But yeah, what else we got here from Bleacher Report? Okay, got another article here from Bleacher Report, an interesting one, saying they're predicting WWE and AEW's next breakout stars ready for a world title run. So let's see who they've got here first. Okay, they've got Sami Zayn here first. To be fair, I like Sami Zayn. He's been in the WWE for so long, it's kind of crazy. It isn't kind of crazy that he's never had a world title run. To be fair, outside of the past few years, he struggled to really connect with the audience like that. Connected to the audience enough for where like it'd be reasonable for him to get a chance with a world title. He's steady been a mid-carder, lower mid-carder, like pretty much his entire WWE main roster career. Of course, in NXT, he actually was a main eventer and was the NXT World Champion for a time. But in the WWE main roster, he never really showed that sort of ability. And to be fair to him, was never really given the opportunity to be like a steady main eventer. That being said, the way Seth Rollins is the way Sami Zayn is at the moment, it's kind of hard to see him taking that next leap again, because he took a leap to like where he is now, like an upper, like still very much a mid-carder, upper mid-carder. Taking another leap to like a bona fide main eventer and breaking out into that next level, very difficult to do. There's only a limited amount of spots. And where Sami Zayn at one point was white hot, when he left the Bloodline, I want to say 2 years ago now, there was a moment, it was around this time 2 years ago, where Sami Zayn was white hot. He could do no wrong. He faced Roman for the title and lost. He should have won that match. He should have won that match, and then you give Sami a run with the belt. The timing was awful because it was right before Mania, and Roman wasn't losing that belt to anyone other than Cody Rhodes, and it wasn't going to happen at like an Elimination Chamber event. You know, that fight, that Roman had to lose the world title to Cody at a Mania. And that was the thing at the time with only having one world championship, where you're going to have so many guys who are mid-carders, upper mid-carders that are ready to make that leap, but you've only got one world champion. So, Sami Zayn, could he become a WWE World Champion? It's possible. But at this point for me, I think it's very unlikely that Sami Zayn will break out again and reach that next level. Who else have they got here? Powerhouse Hobbs. Powerhouse Hobbs, definitely a guy that I'd like to see with the AEW World Championship. A guy with huge size, decent charisma. He's got that sort of hood mentality about him, where like he'll beat a guy down. Huge, again, physicality is a massive one here. This dude must be, I don't even know, similar size to Drew McIntyre, 6'4", 6'5", a very big frame. A guy that can put on good matches as well. I've watched many of his matches in AEW, on AEW pay-per-views, AEW TV. He's able to put on good matches. He's been TNT champion before, and he's a sort of AEW homegrown guy. Before he joined AEW, no one had really heard of him. He was in Team Taz for a bit, I think. Was he in Team Taz? No, he wasn't with Team Taz. He was beefing with Team Taz. Actually, that's right. When he came into AEW, he was beefing Team Taz. And he was called Will Hobbs. And now they call him Powerhouse Hobbs. But yeah, an interesting guy, big guy, still young. I definitely think he could be a breakout star for AEW. Then Bron Breakker. I think this guy should be like the number one pick for WWE Breakout Superstars, where he's basically the only young guy in WWE that's getting a push. Everyone else in WWE is pushing 40 / over 40. All the main eventers are. Cody must be pushing 40. Roman the same. Punk's over 40. Drew McIntyre's probably around that as well. Seth is probably around that as well. Cena obviously, mid-40s. Randy's is mid-40s as well. Sammy's probably up there. Kevin Owens is up there. Like all these guys, none of these guys are young. And that is really, when WWE was seeing their big slump in viewership in the late 2010s, for me, in my opinion, that was why it was. All of your main eventers are old. You need fresh blood. Look at the guys that were at the top of the business when the business was most popular for WWE. You could always make the counter argument with WCW around that same time when their biggest star was Hulk Hogan. And even then, Hulk Hogan was old. Hulk Hogan was mid-40s them times. Potentially, like, maybe pushing 50s towards the end. This dude was old as hell, but he was still at the top. But look at WWE at that time. Young superstars. The Rock was under 30, and he was at the top of his game. He was like 27. Same sort of age as Bron Breakker now. That's what you need. You need the young talent that's willing to go out there and wrestle and try new things. And, you know, like I said, like, try new things. Try things that will connect with a new generation of audience. That are guys that aren't willing to stick with the tried and tested that they've used for the past 10, 15, 20 years in the business because they know what works. These are guys who are young guys who don't know. Maybe they do know, but they want to learn and, like I said, test out new things. So Bron Breakker will 100% be a breakout superstar for WWE. Will he win a world championship this year? I'd love to see it. I think it's probably unlikely the way WWE is in the moment where they just love to do everything slowly and love to have long title reigns. And I really don't like it because it makes everything so predictable. But it's unlikely that Bron will be a WWE World Champion before the end of this year. But I'd love to see it. And to be fair, I don't think it's as unlikely as what I I'm putting out, because Bron Breakker now could feud with someone for the IC title. Even if he goes away for a bit and then comes back and feuds immediately for a world title, everyone's going to be like, yeah, he kind of belongs. He's destroyed loads of guys. You know, I'm thinking, maybe Jey Uso picks Gunther at Mania, finally wins the big one, and then Bron Breakker wins the world title at SummerSlam or Survivor Series or something. That could very well happen, and I wouldn't be surprised if that happened as well, because Bron Breakker's, he's got that aura, he's got that sort of Batista Goldberg-esque aura where like you just run through guys, which is rare it's rare when it actually works. Loads of guys in WWE and AEW, they've tried to build up the next Goldberg, and in the end, it never really ends up working. Bron Breakker looks like initially that it's kind of working because he's been in WWE, I want to say, for 3, maybe 4 years. I wouldn't say 4 years, maybe 3 and a bit years. So Bron could definitely do his thing and definitely be a breakout superstar for WWE this year. Who else have they got? They've got Will Ospreay, AEW. Yeah, Will Ospreay definitely. I think at this point it'll be out of necessity for AEW. I think AEW will have to turn to Will Ospreay because they've got no one else. No other young stars that can do anything. Because the top of their card is MJF, obviously, who's in a weird storyline with Jeff Jarrett. Maybe that's another side quest episode. Jeff Jarrett. MJF's obviously at the top of the card. Adam Copeland, old. Christian, old. John Moxley, old. Darby Allin, to be fair, is young as well. Darby Allin is young. Will Ospreay, young. Kenny Omega, old. Okada, old. You know, like a lot of these guys, Samoa Joe, old. Swerve Strickland's decently young. Hangman Page is decently young as well. So there's a decent mix, but a lot of these guys are quite old. Chris Jericho's old. A lot of these guys are really old, and AEW will probably have to turn to Will Ospreay at some point and have to be like the sort of face of the company, where I think he's shown glimpses of him being capable to do that. His British accent and his promos aren't ideal. I'll be honest, they're not ideal. His in-ring, if you like that style of wrestling, then it's great. And the AEW fan base, to be fair to them, does like that style of wrestling, so it kind of makes sense that they would sort of naturally gravitate towards Will Ospreay. So, in that sense, stylistically, it's a fit that does make a lot of sense in terms of AEW picking a guy for them to next groom to be their next superstar. So, Will Ospreay, decent fit for AEW there. And then lastly, we've got LA Knight. I mean, LA Knight, very similar to Sami Zayn, a guy at one point who was white hot, could do no wrong, had him face Roman for the belt and he lost. And you've just let his momentum wither away. And slowly but surely, sort of, the reactions have started to dwindle. But lucky for LA Knight, he's a super charismatic guy and able to deliver great promos. So he's always going to be able to keep the audience in the palm of his hands at all times for a while, as long as he can carry on to do that. But again, LA Knight's a guy who's been wrestling for a very long time. LA Knight is not young. And this is the problem. LA Knight is a guy who's in his 40s. And we're treating him like he's the next breakout star. Like, someone of Bron Breakker's age is capable of being a breakout star. If you're 41, you're not a breakout star, bro. Just because you're new to the business, just because you're new to WWE doesn't mean you're new to, like, the whole thing. You're still a grizzled veteran. You know, you're still a grizzled veteran that they wasted a lot of time with him in NXT, to be fair. LA Knight's a guy who off rip, if they had just got his character right, could have gone straight to the main roster and would have been a great fit, but they messed about with him. What was his name in NXT? Max Dupree? Terrible gimmick. Very, very weird and terrible gimmick there. But LA Knight, in terms of being able to put on a halfway decent match, and nothing special in the ring, don't get it twisted. He's nothing special in the ring at all. But in terms of a guy who could put on a halfway decent match and cut a killer promo and make you laugh and entertained and sing along with his catchphrases, which another thing that is very underutilized in wrestling at the moment is catchphrases. LA Knight's definitely up there in terms of all of that. So in that sense, could definitely be a breakout superstar, but could I see him winning a world championship this year? I would be more surprised if he won a world championship than Bron Breakker this year. I'll put it that way. But that being said, been a decent one today. Yeah, a good old long episode, 22 minutes. It's been episode 24 of Seth Solo Side Quest. I'm Seth, and I'm out. Peace.